Hi guys, and welcome to Zero Chills TV. As you can see, I'm wearing a shirt, so you know things are about to get serious. Back and Imeva glasses. This is how much respect and admire Yvonne Adhiambo.
Oh,
Who, before we start, let me just read her credentials. As you can see, she's the 2003 Caine Prize for African Writing winner. She's an award-winning author of Dust, which is my favorite book. If you have not read it, please read it. And Dragonfly Sea. She studied creative writing at University of Queensland. She was shortlisted for the Folio Prize. She was a former Lannan Foundation resident. She's a TEDx speaker and a YOA Writers Fellow, STSA Fellow, and also a smiling person. As you can hear, she's already laughing. Before I shed more introduction about her, Yvonne, maybe tell us something small about yourself that people do not know about you.
Something small about yourself. I'm scared of locusts. So scared of locusts, I'm willing to leave my body if locust. I was so petrified when the locust invasion was happening.
Yeah. Are you writing something about locusts?
Oh, they'll always show up as menacing presences in my literature.
Yeah. So we'll get right into the locust field. Now, maybe among the few things that a lot of writers question about themselves, and they just have an issue about themselves. Yvonne, do you like your name?
Do I like?
Do you like your name?
I like my name.
Yes. Do you?
Sorry, I missed that. I
Yes.
absolutely do. I like my name.
Yeah.
I like my name. Yes.
Yeah.
My mother named me a Luo style. I was named after what do you call it? The wife of President de Gaulle. My mother admired her spirit. So Luo naming means if you want your child to echo the particular spirit, you name the person. So yes, I love my name. All of them. Yvonne Adhiambo and a war.
Yvonne Adhiambo. When it comes to writing, identity is one issue that a lot of us grapple with. And for you, through your books, Dust and Dragonfly Sea, which I'm yet to finish, but if we speak to Dust, there's a lot of topics you explore. And just the fact that you're a writer's voice, could you maybe guide us through the path that you led to get to where you say, like, this is truly an Yvonne Adhiambo?
Okay. So the question you're asking is about style and voice. Yeah. I think it's for the new writer, my advice, if it can be that, is to be patient, to understand that your voice is very much also related to where you find yourself in a moment of time in the world. I will hesitate to talk about sense of identity because identity is an ever-evolving thing. It's almost like a magnetic force that that draws energy from the world, from society, from everything that's around you. It's mutable. It keeps changing, right? So to practice, to write, to pick up the literature of others in order to see what styles connect the most with you, and to things like to listen to the music. Writing is also rhythm, and I think that's one of the things that is not emphasized enough. The kind of taste you have is also very specific to you, and to trust that you don't need to be like anybody else, but also to be patient with yourself. Part of the journey of finding your voice and your style. It's a journey. It takes time. I can't even say I've arrived. I know my style is likely to change, and I hope so. It's part of the excitement of discovering one's art. What does art mean for me?
Okay. Speaking of what does art mean to you, do you think that maybe the writer's voice determines the identity? Say, for instance, if I have a specific writing style, do I then become that character that I portray in my books or in my writing? Do I then, where is the line between who you are in your books and who you are out there?
Never ever make that mistake. To understand that art is almost like a treasure given to you. You're a custodian of a process. To never make the mistake of, imagining that you are the art. I know it was a hard lesson, and I wish somebody had mentored me earlier about that. But the late Yvonne is the one who told me, and it's a rule that I absolutely respect: get the hell out of the way of your literature. The story is not about you. Get the hell out of the. Even if you're writing about I is a character as well.
Yes.
I is definitely a separate character from the you who is writing. So the first rule for those who are seeking to start on this journey: get the hell out of the way of your literature. That's from Binyavanga, passed down through me.
Yeah, true. If we maybe just go back a little, maybe where did you grow up before we start even the interview deeper? Where did you grow up, and how has it influenced you? Maybe how has it influenced your writing as well?
I see some lovely comments. Thank you, Mo. I am Nairobi born, bred, fed, formed. I like to emphasize that when people think that I had access to other worlds. So my inspiration is entirely, and I'll also use the word unfortunately, very Nairobiist. In that Nairobi is a place one loves, and you struggle to have it love you back. Sometimes it loves you back, and the moment you want to leave it, it calls you right back to itself. So needless to say, I've got a very mixed relationship with the city of my birth. But yes, the inspiration is very much the city, its struggles, its dreams, its people, its hopes, the landscape, and the bigger influence, of course, is the country, Kenya. I'm, of course, it's no surprise that I'm influenced by its politics and its questions of belonging. And very much the moment of becoming very afraid in 2007, 2008, when we almost lost our country. It was the first time I realized that you can lose your country. A human being can lose their country. And when you lose your country, I promise you, nobody in the world wants you. So yes, this is a part of my influences. I went to school, Loreto Convent, Valley Road. Very strong grounding in English grammar and English literature. I think that is something that seems to be missing. I think in the system. I don't know which clever idiot decided to separate grammar from literature. And for those of you who are starting out in writing, it's absolutely essential to be grounded in the language in which you want to use, whether it's Swahili or, I don't know, Mandarin or Urdu, to be grounded in the grammar and the literature as separate processes. But yes, I was an avid reader. I've been a reader from the time I was a bit precocious. I think I started reading at 3. So I've always read. I've always had books around me, and I've always loved the word. So these are. I think that's kind of the summary of a lot.
Yes. Yeah. So you mentioned that you are a Nairobist, and if we take something from your book, Dust, is that a lot of things that you wrote about Dust showed a lot of, like you said, a lot of the responsibility of a writer, where you saw that you could lose your country. Yeah. What is the responsibility of the writer today?
The responsibility of the writer, to you young ones coming up as writers, your responsibility is only to the story. The story is your country. The story is your loyalty. That's one part. There's another responsibility of you as a human being. There are 2 questions that I always put forward and I wish somebody had again told me that when I was starting out. There are 2 questions that inform our artistic quest and our journey, story journeys. 1, what does it mean for me to be human? in this time? Second, what does the humanity of the other mean for me? You got those?
Yes.
What does it
What
mean
does
for
it
me
mean?
to be human? Yes. You got those? That becomes the constant and unending quest in every encounter with a country, with others, with the things that confuse you. To return to that, what does it mean for me to be human in this moment? What does the humanity of the other mean for me? And those become kind of the questions that inform whichever story emerges or shows itself, and wants to be told. The responsibility of the quest, of being honest with the puzzles. I write because I want to make sense of the things I don't know. I don't write about things I know, not at all. It's always like I use writing to figure out, to create a map, to understand the thing that bothers me.
Yeah. So, do you go to the story, or does the story come to you? Because that is a question that a lot of young people also grapple with. Should I go to the story, or should the story come to me?
Listen, young people, the story, it depends on what kind of muse you have. And I say that very half jokingly. I think every culture has the idea of the what do you call it, the inspiring spirit, the inspiration. The Luos call it juogi. It depends on what kind of muse you have. Sometimes the story, in my case, the story comes to me. I don't look for the story. The story jumps on me. Might wake up in the morning and there's a full paragraph already, and my job is to run after the story and see where it's going. And for others are made adventurous. You have a muse that wants to adventure, so you travel, you move into a place, you go somewhere, and your senses put together a story for you. So you will find your style, and don't let anybody tell you there's only one way. You will find your style, and that's part of the idea of patience and understanding. What is the style? What is the type of story world? What's the type of world your story has called you into?
Yeah. Okay. I say, Yvonne, I have a story, right? Say, for instance, I'm really struggling with how. Okay, I'm struggling with how how LGBTQIA stories are told in Africa, and I want to tell it. How do I know that this is our story worth telling, and I'm not just repeating what others have said?
I would simply, if you were in one of my intensives, I would be asking you very simply, what is the story? So if I were to ask you that, Eddie, what is the story?
Okay, you're asking me right now.
Yes, I am. We might as well make it a little bit practical. What is the story?
Okay. The story is that I don't feel like the LGBTQIA stories have been told well enough.
That's not the story.
What is the story?
You have a second chance. What is the story? We'll give you one more chance, then I'll tell you.
Poleni watu nawaangusha.
Try. There's no wrong answer. Try.
Let me look for my muse. We had dinner today.
Okay, let me make it let me make it easier. But I'm sure we'll run into each other one of these times. I'll make sure you're in one of my intensives. People leave crying, but I promise them that at the end they will write a story.
Yes.
Eddie, a story is about a character.
Yeah.
It's always about a character. I mean, it could even be a monster, but the story is always about a character. So when I say get the hell out of the way of the story, as Binyavanga taught me, your obligation is to the character and the character's journey, right? Even if that character is gay or whatnot, your obligation is to the character and to the character's journey and the character's relationships. The challenge that a lot of our and this comes from the old world before our time, when the stories that we were expected to tell were always developmentally themed, or you had to feature the HIV afflicted father and the village goat and the witch doctor kind of thing, and that crisis came from the development world. They were the only ones who were funding stories, but they determined this was the kind of story ideas that they wanted, which was why the emergence of Binyao was so revolutionary for us at that time. At least you guys have got the you now have new templates. But to go back to that, so I'm a bit concerned that it seems to be still prevalent, the idea that when we meet, especially young people, and maybe we are the ones to blame. When I say what is the story, people say, oh, the story is about the malaria or trypanosomiasis or LGBT issues. Yes. But quite frankly, at the point where I'm engaging you as a fellow author, as a growing author, all I want to know is, tell me your story. Tell me the story. And the story is a character. It's always a character who undergoes something, whose world changes, and who grapples with questions and issues and what you call a moral core, and gets transformed or not, in which case he dies. That becomes a tragedy, right? And the relationships, yes. So there, I mean, it's a whole thing. There's a whole class around that. And for those who are looking for references, please look up anything that says story premise. What is the story premise? Anybody who will, if you just Google that, what is the story premise? Study that, learn that, ground yourself in story premises, so that you will understand then immediately that when you have that elevator pitch and somebody says, "What is the story?" You're talking about a character's journey.
Yes. Speaking of, maybe I should have remember that your book Dust was about the story of the Ogada family. So I think it's the pressure of the job. Now, before we go straight,
no, not at all, not at all. I think it's part of the exchange, part of the necessary exchange, and I'm glad you've made this space available. Yes.
Thank you. Now, Mushira has one question, and how has your journey been to creating your literary brand? Those words really hurt me to say, literally and literary.
It's okay. Oh man, it's tough, man. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to say it looks glamorous on the surface, but that's after you've spent, maybe a whole year in pajamas. But it's tough, and I do tell people, do this job, take up this if you know there's nothing else in the world that you'd rather do. Do it because of that. If you get rewarded, that's like extra icing on the cake. Do it because you love it. Do it because you cannot do anything else. Then it makes complete. Then you will be grounded, because there'll be days when, if you're starting out, there are days in which you will be walking with 5 bob in your pocket, and the school friend that you used to look down on flashes by in a Mercedes S-Class, and you will have to be able to hold on to the dream in your heart. That's the only thing that's going to keep you going. Do it because there's nothing else in life that you would rather do. And if you were told, and this was one of the best experiences I ever had, was to write. I decided, there's a long story behind it, but the simple version was simply, I was asked to write my obituary. And by the way, that's also an exercise I include. To write your obituary. There's nothing as realistic as being confronted with a life not lived. And it was writing in writing that obituary. Was the moment I understood that the thing I regret, because one of the second line, the second paragraph was, she regrets. What she regrets most is, and I was so surprised at that time that what I wrote was, what she regrets most is not writing her books. And I had no idea at that time that I wanted to write. I was very much in the corporate world, following the corporate trajectory. So
Yes.
so that was the particular line. Do it because there's nothing else you'd rather do.
Do it because there's nothing else you'd rather do. Speaking of books, Ovicha is asking, what's that one book that changed your life, made you cry or laugh so hard or the one that you still can't get enough?
Oh, there are so many. There's so many. I'm promiscuous in my love of books, very promiscuous. But I can tell you, Lord of the Rings. Man, I think there are quite a few Middle Earthers around. We keep looking for Middle Earth. And then there's, of course, The English Patient. There is, oh my goodness, most of Graham Greene's books. There was some Enid Blyton's. I mean, of course, V.S. Naipaul. And even though, and I think about V.S. Naipaul is, he's insulting you, but the way he uses words, you go back to it, you want to smack him, but you're weeping because the words are just so beautiful. So people like I said, so many. I almost regret choosing one over the other.
Yeah. Okay. But they say in writing that you should always kill your darling. So I don't know what's your opinion on the same. Do you have your own favorite book between the three that you've written? Dust, Dragonfly Sea, and Waiting Whispers.
My books are like cats. Once I've written them, they tell me, "Don't call us, we'll call you." So even if I'm running after them, they've moved on.
Yes.
So it's always the next book, the next story. And I do have I do have a sense of stories backed up. It's almost like I need to get that one out and the next one out.
Yeah. Now, still on the same area, there's a lot of self-flagellation in writing where an author or a writer feels like this is not good enough. There's always that self-doubt and imposter syndrome, so to speak. How then do you convince yourself that I can do this? This is something that burns within me, and that I have to say there's a story inside.
You use the right word there, burns. If it burns within you, the only relief you will have is if you write it. And the imposter syndrome, let me put it this way. Every new book, no matter how many I have written, I approach it with the same vulnerability and uncertainty. The only difference now is that because I've written other books, I recognize these things, these energies as necessary as part of the process, to befriend them, to befriend the fear, to befriend the uncertainty. To understand it's okay. But when starting out, it can be very nerve-wracking. So to those of you who are starting out, those particular energies will never leave you. And it's a good sign, because to approach work with absolute confidence is probably, the chances are very high then that work is not necessarily going to stand the test of time. The author as artist is necessarily vulnerable before the great presence of art. It's a very, I find it very sacred, right? It's almost as if you take out your shoes, you're standing on holy ground, with a bit of fear, a bit of awe, right? And by the way, but one of the other things, there's that particular energy, but there's one damaging one. The one where in a few of my intensives, when I'm meeting young authors, I say, the first act you're going to commit is an act of murder.
Yes.
Kill the critic. And it's not necessarily the external critic, by the way. It's the internal critic that says, who the hell do you think you are? The one that says, you are born to fail. Or the critic that accumulates the voices of all those who are around you who said, do something more meaningful with your life. There's no hope or life in writing. Yeah. These are things we internalize. So kill the critic, the one that wastes your time, that makes you hesitate before you write your first line. Kill that critic. That's your first act. The next thing is, Right. Simply right. But having said right, I am assuming then what you have done is you have done the work. You have done the reading. You've got
Yes.
a book in your bags every time. You've got a notebook in which you're using your senses to observe life. You have also grounded yourself in grammar, right? And you're constantly improving. And up to now, you're constantly doing craft work. You're working on things, whether it's metaphor, what is dialogue, what is characterization. You're constantly reading, and I'm constantly reading that as well. You can never assume that you have reached. You're always beginning again. Yeah.
Okay. Super. Concerning your sessions, Mo is asking where they can find where they should sign up.
It's usually somebody dragging me by the neck and twisting my arm and forcing me into giving a session. So the ones that I've done in Kenya, I've also done a few abroad, are in a place called Filamujwani, the kind of film training school based at Hope Center. Maureen Cairo is the director there, spearheaded by Kenolo. But yeah, so they drag me over to work with the filmmakers around matters of story. It's a one-day intensive. But yeah, I mean, if people organize it, I will come.
Okay, Maureen, challenge. So we'll get it done. Don't worry, Yvonne. We'll get it done. We'll call you Now, Mushira has another question, which starts by a disclaimer. I know this might sound funny, but how are you able to write stories that appeal to audiences across the socio-economic divide? The Dragonfly Sea and Dust have received raving reviews from CEOs, CSS, you will read that for yourself, and then the rest of Candid. How are you able to do that? How does your writing, Mushira, exquisiteness have anything to do with your socio-economic class?
Mushira, thank you so much. That is so generous of you. Thank you. Means a lot. Ultimately, Mushira, story is story. And I'm not saying, oh, by the way, there are enough people who hate the works, like hate them with a passion, and that's fine. You're never going to please everybody. But the audiences that have that the stories have connected with are those who appreciate a certain kind of story style. It's nothing whatsoever to do with social class whatsoever, nothing at all. It has everything to do with craft and the understanding and the reverence for the ideas of story. Yes, and when that happens, it's like it's almost like an ice. It's almost like icing on the cake. Remember what I said earlier. You're writing because there's nothing else on earth that you'd rather do, and you write because you're right. And then it happens. It happens that you run into people. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Set what record straight. I missed that.
No problem. Faith Kamiko says, organize you guys. It's a deal. Don't worry. We'll get Yvonne. She's hard to find, but she's possible to find. That's the best thing. And so Faith Logo is also asking, hello Yvonne, I'm a big fan of your work. I've been arguing with my friends and I would appreciate if you could set the record straight. How does it? Wow. Wow.
No, my dears. I don't know. What can I say? I don't know. I'm not sure myself. But okay, maybe this is a revelation. They live, they don't die.
Yes,
they don't die.
Maybe I also have a question on Dust, Yvonne, that maybe has done well into alluding to, and it goes that I saw that you had a lot of dreams for Kinawo, sorry, for the family for Moses' family in Dust, yeah? And
Yes.
and I saw that maybe they were all broken in some way. Is there a particular theme other than what goes on in the book that is obvious? Is there a particular theme of dreams and brokenness that you are trying to achieve, especially since that you are writing in a post-colonial period of Kenya?
Actually, it was more about the Kenya dream, I guess, and I think the story of Dust came out of my great heartbrokenness, the 2007 2008. That it was a traumatic turning point for me. I think it was the first time I felt in my bones, in my belly, the idea of my Kenyan identity. I was most certain about the fact that I am Kenyan, and I emphasize that. So it was very. So it came from that brokenheartedness, and at that time, I think I've told the story before. I'm not going to tell it in full. But, at that time of the violence, a few of us writers actually took a trip to one of the sites in Eldoret, and what I saw broke my heart so completely. I remember crying and crying, and I remember thinking, we're going to lose our country, and we're going to lose our beautiful country, and it'll be lost over stupidity, complete and utter stupidity. I remember also at that time traveling. I was working for Aga Khan, and I was traveling to Tanzania. And can you believe that they caused everybody else to leave, and they asked Kenyans to stay on the plane, to stay on the plane. And then when we disembarked, I remember the customs official basically this darao, and you're told you're coming here to bring your food, you're here, and you know what? There was nothing we could say. Nothing. I think we were about 15. I remember us just standing quietly, but I remember at that time thinking, nobody wants, really, my heart goes out to refugees in a very deep way, because I understood briefly. Nobody wants, there's a certain meanness that people have when you lose your country. So the book came from that heartbrokenness. So maybe that's part of the thing. Yeah, and I mean, if you guys also look into history, and I hope many of you are interested in history, but digging, not the history you learned in school, but digging through the deeper history, the hopes this country had when it started out. Yeah, I went to the archives to look at the hopes and the language of almost like and the imagination people had. When the Americans went to the moon, do you know that there were some Kenyans that set up an office, so that they too would, by 2015, Kenyans would also go to the moon. It was that kind of hope, and it all comes crashing down. So yeah, the book comes from that place of brokenheartedness.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I read Peter Kimani's book, The Dance of the Jacaranda, which you also led me to it through Dust.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history about how Kenya, that colonial period and the hopes that were coming from that period, of having a new Kenya. And maybe just to borrow a page from the Black History Month in the States, where someone was saying that there are not enough Black writers, especially who are gatekeepers, who are keeping the history of our country. Would you say maybe that in Africa, especially in Kenya, we don't have enough people who have written extensively about our history?
Eddie, that is why I promise I always make myself available for processes like this, for what you're doing. And even if you organize the intensive, I promise to show up. There's so much. The histories we have are longing for us. The stories that need to be told, that there are so many, and they're not enough who are, they're not enough workers in the field for that. I know it involves great sacrifice. It does. I promise you it does. But and it's kind of like, it becomes a vocation. It's not necessarily something you do because you're looking for a career. but there's so much that needs to be told. And given the fact that the history that we have been given is absolutely, a lot of it, if you forgive the language, is bullshit. It's created to make us, what do you call it, float. We're not grounded, but the grounded history does exist, and it's just waiting for somebody to write it, to find it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think there's a right here in this session today. So, Michael Miyoma is asking, what fuels your fire? What is your writing culture like? And how do you stay sharp? And how have you managed to remain consistent and not discouraged?
Oh, Michael, I wish I could tell you the truth. I wish I could lie to you and say I wake up in the morning and I'm at my desk promptly on this. That's a fantasy. Every writer has that fantasy. You wake up in the morning and suddenly, for example, the walls need painting, the flower, all those things. I'm a master procrastinator, but nothing beats the pressure in the heart of a story aspect that needs to be told, or running. Oh, by the way, one of the things you're going to learn, one of the things you writers are going to learn very quickly, is at one point when you and the story have connected, the story starts to talk to you. And it will not let you, literally, it's not madness. The story starts to guide you. You might be having a conversation with Eddie and you're thinking, actually, that thing Eddie's saying is exactly what the character is saying. So when that happens, you've got no choice but to go to the desk. What keeps me going is simply is the idea I'm to go. I don't know. I don't necessarily know the ending, but I'm always curious about how the story is going to go. So, in many ways, I'm also like a reader, a pre-reader of the story that I'm writing, and I'm always also very curious about where that's going to happen. Yes, and the other stuff, of course, nature, the history. I'm a bit of a history buff. People relate, stories, the stories of the country, stories. Somebody might say, such as such. Then you're thinking, oh my goodness, that's a story. There's a story there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is just sit your butt down and write. The desk. I think Faith had a question about histories. Where do you get it? The archives are amazing. The museums have got some incredible stuff. Some of the history lecturers, a lot of the deeper histories are in the minds of our great scholars. Look them up, hunt them down, and sit them down and just ask them, just talk and listen. There are some living historical sites like Pate, Lamu, Mombasa. Actually, every single place has got a site of history. Our job and your job, my dear young writers, is dare to go, not just asking grandma, but walk around the landscape and ask people. There are stories all over. We're so blessed in the country we have, because even the stones speak, so to say. Even the stones have a story. Just ask the right person and they'll tell you.
Okay. Now, Yvonne, I have the story. I've written the story. I've gotten it edited, and I feel like this is a good story. I'm a young writer. I don't know who can publish me. I don't know how to market my story, but I have the story. What do I do?
Okay, let's if you don't mind, let's backtrack. You have the story. You've written the story, yes. Right? How many drafts?
Yeah.
How many drafts?
Let's say 3.
Okay, that's about average. Actually, you probably need 5 drafts. Okay, and by the 3rd draft, who did you give it to?
I'd look for maybe a publishing house with an editor.
No, you don't. You look for your peers. You look for your colleagues, your peers. Those who will
Yes.
tell you the truth, and look for the one that doesn't even like you, but you know that he or she likes story. Those are the ones you look
Yes.
for, and you beg them, please read this for me. Please read this and be as brutal as you need to be.
Yes.
So I have a group of 7. They're ruthless. Bina was my other one, so I'll really miss him because he was the one. He's the one who told me when I wrote the first version of Dust. He says he looked at it, he looked at me, he says, "Yvonne, this is bullshit." You need somebody who can tell you that. So your peers are your first line of defense, and they're your first kind of audience, and they will be honest. So
Yes.
you take their comments and you rewrite. Writing is rewriting, by the way.
Yes.
Guys, remember that writing is rewriting. You incorporate the comments, and then now you bring it down to 3 of them. Ask them to read it again. After you incorporate the changes from them, find an editor. Or there are 2 ways you can go. Find an editor, but the other way, actually, publishing houses actually prefer to edit themselves. Publishing houses have their own editors. Your challenge as a young person is getting access to the networks. We do not have the full value chain network in Kenya, because once your manuscript is ready, ideally you should have an agent, right? Those of you who are interested in the writing business, there's a whole market niche there. The representative of the writer. And Eddie, it's the agent who will now find the publisher. And once you find the publisher identifies an editor who will work with you in identifying elements of the story. And then the whole marketing machinery takes over from there. The design team, the copywriting, the line editing, the copy editing, the fact checking, all of these things happen in big publishing houses. And hopefully we ourselves in Kenya will get there. Kwani used to do it with the manuscript prize. For all sorts of reasons, that's no longer happens. But I hope Jahazi will be able to get there. And then your job as a writer is actually to write. Your job is not to publish. Please don't do that, because you're wasting your time. And I'll tell you now, you're wasting your time. Don't. The agent is supposed to find your publisher for you. Your job is to write. You should be working on your next story as well. And please remember, as writers, if one day, and editors and publishers are always visiting the country, the only thing they'll ever ask you is, do you have a manuscript ready? So your job as a writer is to write. Oh, by the way, when I won the Caine Prize, I only won it with that one story. There were 6 different publishers came up to say, "Oh, Yvonne, we're so happy for you. Now, please send us your manuscript." Do you know I had no manuscript, none whatsoever, none.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's one thing another thing I'd tell you guys, just please write your manuscript. Get it workshopped. The thing of asking your peers is calling it. Get it workshopped. Let it be publishing ready. And yeah. The rest of the process follows.
Now, you mentioned that your job as a writer is to publish. Yvonne, if
write. Your job as a writer, yes, is to write.
Yes, it's to write. My apologies. But if you notice, recently there's been a sharp rise in self-publishing, especially in the country with younger authors. What's your opinion?
Look, I'm excited about the what do you call it, the variety of literatures in the market, but I guess this is what's necessary at this time. But the market will correct itself. Unfortunately, some of the stuff I've picked up is unfinished, with very obvious gaps in editing, in line editing, in copy editing. Quite frankly, I'm a bit old school in that. I think if you're going to do this, please do it well. Please do it very, very well, because no one's going to cut you slack because you self-published. They will be expecting you to compete with the rest of the world. And it might end up being a bit like how our earlier films were. Kenyans stopped being invited to film festivals because our work was just so bad. Yet we would praise it highly here. But that just encourages mediocrity. I'm not saying the work is mediocre. I'm just saying some of the stuff that I've read is so beautiful. Yet you're kind of saying, and maybe that's also part of our responsibility. It could have done with another rewrite. It could have done with another edit. It could have done with a professional editor looking at the piece before going into publishing.
Super. Thank you. Now, there's a related question from Mushira, which is a bit long, so I'll read for you. Reading from Achebe's essay, The Role of a Writer in a New Nation. One of the roles of the writer is to remind people of the dangers in the society. I think that the greatest danger facing us as Kenyans is the post-colonial government, closely related. And I hope it's okay to agree too, Kwani, which you among the pioneers is said to have been infiltrated by the state. Not a new thing, as literature has been seen as a violent tool against the oppressor way before the days of Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Do we stand the chance to realize the role of the writer with the imminent literary censorship and change in education curriculum?
Because of the frontier of the internet, the frontier of the digital world, you have absolutely no limits. You have no limits and no excuses, frankly. That's one. The second thing is the role of the writer's role is various. You have multiple roles to play. You can hold. There are those writers who are called to hold society responsible, to be the mirrors, to dare to name the kings naked, and then there are those who are called to write the romances, the space, the space stories, the poetry of flowers kind. I would argue for the unlimited writer, the big, the biggest varieties of the kinds of writers. Ultimately, you're drawn by what compels your spirit and your heart. What pisses you off? What do you want to see? What's your ideal? What keeps you up at night? Those are the things that, what are the things you wrestle with? What are the things you no longer believe? What are the things you want for yourself, for your family, for your country? Go with where your heart, follow your heart. Yes, that's the thing. Follow where your heart goes, right? Yeah. Also follow where your sleeplessness takes you. It is in these places where your stories lie. Yes.
That is pretty profound. Follow your heart. Write what keeps you up at night. Now, as we come to the close of the session, I can't believe it's been 52 minutes already. Shira still has another question, but before we go to Shira's question, I just want to, because Faith has a question concerning Dragonfly Sea. And I'd like to, before we Faith questions, I want to know what is the best line in a book. I know you said you are a promiscuous reader, but there's that line that sticks out with you.
Do you know the line that I keep going back to? The whole thing where you have a writer's envy. Actually, there are two. The first line, in a hole in the ground, there was a hobbit. That's from The Hobbit. But the other one that I go back to, and it's one of those things that is the first the book of the Gospel of John. The first line, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It is the most exquisite poetry. It's like everything. It's almost like the whole world is contained in 3 sentences. If you could write like that, man, if I could write that, if I could write that, I would retire. I'd be greeting all of you and say, look at me, look at words.
I also love that line in the beginning of the work. Actually, it inspired my Monica.
Oh, really? Oh, my God. It is incredible. It is amazing.
And it's also,
As a student of literature, you can study it. You can study it for
yeah,
days.
yes. Now, Faith's question. I have a question.
Yeah.
Why did Ayana take a long time to leave Corey? Why did she allow herself to stay in that situation?
Wait. Tell Faith I'm with you. Do you know when Corey showed up in the story, the way he did? Do you know? I started to judge Ayana. I refused. I wanted her to move in a certain direction, and the story dried up. The story dried up for 2 weeks. Nothing until I returned to the idiot again. So Corey, I don't know. This is the story. This is one of the situations where the story was telling you this is the direction you're going to go. And yeah. So, but I think it's one of those things of because it's a coming of age story. Which young woman hasn't made well, there's some who haven't, but some of us are notorious for making that wrong choice. That choice that if you had friends around you would say, really, what were you thinking? But yes, so that's her situation. That's what were you thinking, Ayana?
Yes. Okay. I think I also had a question because the Dragonfly Sea is a bit a journey of worlds where there's the Asian, there's the African heritage. And I felt like maybe there was a lot of internal struggle as well, especially with the protagonist. Was it something you were going through at that time? I mean, it's just the story.
No, that particular struggle comes from again, there's a big backstory, and if we do the intensive, I'll probably tell you more about it. But the struggle comes from the African struggle with its resumption of relationships with Asia. We have an old relationship that the intervention of the European broke so completely that we now treat the Chinese as if they were the strangers. Yet we have a 600-year-old history. And discovering that, I lived in Zanzibar. That was the first place I discovered it. I learned about it to my shame and ignorance. There was a fourth generation Zanzibari of Chinese origin living in Zanzibar. So to realize that, I think in a way it was my way of trying to make sense. What does China's return to Africa actually mean? And to be frank, I started off with a different position when I started writing that story. But research and history and talking to people, that's when you kind of realize, okay. I mean, that book also changed me in that it changed my perspective quite a lot. And I think that struggle then shows up. That kind of struggle shows up. The realization that our relationships are older, are 700-year-old relationships that were just broken, just 120 years ago, but broken so completely that even we have forgotten that what do you call it? Our lives, especially through the sea, is interconnected. But just very briefly, part of the brokenness also comes from our separation from the sea. Can you believe how many where I was doing the work and in certain places that shall remain unmentioned? One of the dumbest questions I was asked was that, but aren't Africans afraid of the sea? The idea that we don't have a maritime imagination, that we have no relationship with the sea, that pissed me off so much. I know Faith was asking what pisses you off. The kind of ignorance that assumes that Africans were waiting for, especially the Europeans, to come and make us human. That pisses me off so much.
Oh, sorry, I put myself on mute. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this has been one of my most favorite sessions, and I'm sure there are so many other questions coming in. But before we
Okay.
leave, there's one burning question from Shira. Can I
Yes.
find it? Okay. Okay, this will be
Yeah.
our last question. There have been politics regarding what African literature is, especially when it comes to literary rewards such as the
Yes.
Caine Prize. There are critics
Yeah.
who argue that the reward is a tool to marginalize African culture written by the natives. Your opinion?
Thank you. That's a very, very good question. Quite frankly, to be honest, the critics of the Caine Prize, I would not have been known in Kenya if it had not been for the Caine Prize. We are our own worst enemies in that we don't even create prizes for our own people. To award a writing prize for $10,000, the type of money that is made by what do you call it? It's one day change for some of the COVID millionaires or billionaires if they could put aside just 1 million to arrange what do you call it? To arrange a prize, just a single prize, even in the name of thieves. Seriously, it would make such a difference. We are our own worst enemies, and there are no limits to the African story. By the way, I always insist that I don't say I'm an African writer. I say I'm a writer from Africa. I say that deliberately, and I make it a very deliberate position because when we run into European or American writers, they're not, what do you call it, in forums, they're not presented as American writers or European writers. They're just presented as writers. So I claim my space. I'm a writer from Africa. And to those of you who are starting out with the African literature, I beg you, please do not constrain your minds. There's no one way of African literature. If you write about a Japanese monk who finds meaning in clearing the Nairobi River, that is also, and it is you who have written it, you with your African passport and your African blood. That is also a story of Africa, right?
Yes. Okay. Shira, I hope you are answered, and to everyone else. Now, Yvonne, before we close, from our notes there, we can see that you've been to a lot of fellowships, and sometimes most of the questions that I get from other writers is, how do I apply for these fellowships? Should I be called unto them, or should I look for them and apply? And what do I need?
Okay, thank you, Eddie, for that particular question. It's very good. Eddie, there are quite a few fellowships worldwide, and there is actually a need they actually actively look for writers from Africa. What they ask for, there's always something in the fellowship portfolio. What they need is that you have been published. And it doesn't need to be a full book. It could even be an article, a commentary, and it is published well. It's not necessarily your name that's going to open the doors for you. It's the things you have published. And what they want to see is that you have a point of view, a perspective, an understanding, a questioning sense, a sense of wonder. So again, this is the other encouragement I have for you young writers. Please write articles, the things that move you, the questions you have. Dare to ask big questions. What does this COVID season mean for you right now? Hell, write about Donald Trump. What does his existence mean? Comment about the world. Elon Musk has gone to Mars. What's the implication of that? Write about the world, but write from Kenya, right? Get small articles out, short stories, commentaries. These are the things that build up your portfolio. These are the things that people look for. And those of you who are going for fiction classes, build up your short story collections right now, okay? And the rest of you who are aiming for the big things, please start working on your manuscript and work on your manuscript thoroughly and profoundly. It means simplifying your life. Then simplify your life. if you need to. Like I say, your commitment and loyalty and your only flag is to the story. The fellowships exist. Those of you who want to do MFAs, there's the American space, but I think that has kind of closed down a little because of their political situation. It's a nice. I want to say this: their political crisis in America. But look to places like Australia. They give the MPhil that I did. They actually provide you with full scholarships, both including a living allowance, and you can also work. That's a really, really cool space. But make sure they've got lots of lovely creative writing programs there. There are the places you look at, Ireland, the UK, Canada as well. Look also at the possibility of places like South Korea. There are those of you who want to do screenwriting. Man, those guys are amazing. They are so far ahead. They are so far ahead. Both South Korea as a priority, Japan as a possibility as well. All I'm saying is you're limitless. And yes, and the fellowships are there. And I will maybe talk to Eddie about maybe guidelines to applications, what to expect and where to look. And maybe I can also provide a list for Eddie to distribute as he wills.
Yes. Guys, I'm having a case of Stockholm syndrome. I don't want to let Yvonne go. The more questions I have, and the more intensive this session is getting. Now, before I go, Yvonne, your memento mori, that's the last copy, or let's say the last, or those. Okay. What is that thing that someone told you that changed your life, that gave us the Yvonne Adhiambo world we see today?
Fear is overrated. Don't waste your time with it. Okay. Fear is overrated. Please don't waste your time with it. Preoccupied with it.
Okay. Fear is overrated. Don't waste time. Remember, a story is about a character. That is what my major take home. Of course, I'm going to rewatch this interview because I was interviewing and I was not listening to everything because it's hard to interview, Yvonne understand. But a story is about
a character's journey.
About a character's journey. I'm a terrible student.
Yes.
About a character's journey. Yvonne, your last words. Your closing
remarks. I'm excited. I'm very proud of you guys. I'm thrilled. I look forward to meeting some of you in that intensive. And please write. That's the very last word is write. Please write. Yeah, it's limitless out there. Yes, and and I'm here for you guys. Yeah, proud of you.
Thank you. As you've heard, she's here for us and she's proud of us. But make sure you keep on. We'll find a way to organize the intensive. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Major thanks to Yvonne for being an awesome interviewee. And thank each and every one of you, Sheila, Faith, Michael, Nisi, Ovita, Yegon. The list is endless. We thank you. Jeff was here, Yvonne. I hope you saw his comment.
Yes, I did.
Yes, if you told him to watch.
He's amazing. He's one of those kind of pillars for all of us, for us writers. Yeah, no, he's amazing. Jimo will always show up. Yeah.
We see you. We'll come for you as well. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for this session. But don't leave yet. Yegon, take us home.
Okay.